Labour have been critical of the Tories' shoddy refugee policy towards Ukraine, but they're in danger of missing the point. Speaking to Sky News, this was Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper.
We're calling for emergency visas to be issued, a much simpler, faster process where you can do the biometrics and security checks on the spot and then have an emergency visa without people having to fill in 14 pages of forms, without people having to struggle to kind of upload documents while they're in the back of a car, fleeing, trying to get to safety. Because I think what we've seen is just really shambolic, and it's not fair on people who have already fled a war zone, people who have already endured so much, had to leave behind so much, and have fled a Russian bombardment. They should be able to get to safety and join family. And that's what really this is about.
Yvette Cooper sounded reasonable there. She sounded sympathetic. But there was a glaring problem with what she said. The UK isn't just failing Ukrainians because we're processing visas too slowly. It's not just because we're incompetent, even though we are. We're failing Ukrainians by requiring them to apply for visas in the first place. All other countries in Europe, the rest of Europe, has waived the need for visas from people who are fleeing Ukraine. People can apply for status once they're inside the country in which they want to settle, instead of having to do it before they get there. That makes a lot of sense. These are people fleeing war. Very difficult to ask them to fill in all the forms beforehand before they arrive in Britain. It'd be much easier to do that when they're in the place where they want to get to, when they're with friends, when they're with family. That's the necessary move the Tories are refusing to make, and that's what Labour are refusing to call for. Let's take a look at some more of that interview.
And the concern against that from the government is that it may well let in people who are not actually fleeing violence. They're trying to get into Britain for nefarious reasons.
But you can do the biometric and security checks on the spot. The problem with what the government's done is, first of all, they've not had the proper centres in place. They've not set up emergency centres in order to be able to do biometrics or security checks. They've not done the proper planning to look at whether they could use the same technology that they used for Hong Kong so that you can do a lot of those checks online. And then they've made it really complicated. So they're sort of picking and choosing between families rather than just saying everybody should be able to come to join family or friends. We know most people want to stay in Poland or in Hungary or close to Ukraine and close to home. But those who've got family or friends are reaching out to people who can look after them. And instead, they're having to meet all kinds of technical requirements rather than just having a very simple system in place. So this could be done much, much faster. We just shouldn't have these delays. We should have something proper in place that can let families reunite at such an awful time.
I mean, it's worth saying, to be fair, Labour's policy is better than the Conservatives on this one. The Conservatives are giving visas to Ukrainians if they have friends or family in the country, or if they get sponsored by an organisation. The idea that people who are fleeing war are going to find an organisation to sponsor them, I find, particularly offensive. But Labour's policy is that any Ukrainian can get a visa. So it is an improvement. But the problem is that unlike all of these other European countries, many of them with more right-wing governments than the Labour Party has, we won't waive visas. We won't waive visas essentially for the same reason that the Conservative Party are saying they won't waive visas, which is that apparently it's a security risk. Now, you do have to ask, why, if this isn't a big enough security risk to worry Germany, France, Hungary, Spain, what is it about Britain that means that we are so vulnerable to, I suppose the security risk here, if you're saying we'll give a visa to any Ukrainian, is someone who's not a Ukrainian saying they are, and then them being dangerous somehow with a fake passport. I mean, it's slightly difficult to work out what exactly the risk is here. But in any case, if this is a risk that Germany can deal with, that France can deal with, as I've been talking about on previous shows, Angela Merkel during the Syrian migrant crisis, and yes, people can have solidarity towards non-white people even if they're European. That was the German policy at the time, right? Her statement then was, we're a strong country, we can manage. We're a strong country, we can manage. The British line in all of these situations when international solidarity is required when it comes to migration is to say, we are not going to make any compromises because, goddamn, this is a vulnerable society. And if we let in a single person with nefarious motives, the whole thing's going to collapse. It's very, very pathetic. Clearly, maybe Putin does send someone with a fake Ukrainian passport, blah, 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 blah. The Germans have an intelligence system that can deal with it. Do we not? Or what is it about Britain that means that we have to make migrants in desperate situations go through all of these hoops before they can come to Britain and find safety? What is it about us? I don't get it. That's the question that should be put to them.